The real treasure was the friends we made along the way, I guess. Hello and welcome to Quotation Points Video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books, discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read-through of The Looking Glass Illusion by Sara Ella. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 34. After everybody has eaten on the train, Chess looks around and asks where everybody else is. Buckley explains that after Chess and Snark jumped, it started a chain reaction. Everybody else woke up and either jumped as the boys had done, or they waited to get off at the 8th square. They ask what's waiting for them at the 8th square, to which Buckley replies that it depends on the person, which is to say that the Jabberwocks are there. This leads Chess to tell the others about his theory, that each Jabberwock is completely controlled by an individual Wonderlander. That fills them with hope. If they've created the monsters, then they can be unmade. Buckley tells them that their stop is coming up, except that it's not a station and they're going to have to jump out again, so they gather their things and head for the door, linking hands before they take the leap. In the square, they find the others that they needed to leave behind, but also Alice, but also all of their Jabberwocks. It's finally time for the big final battle. Chapter 35. Alice finds she doesn't need anything except to believe in herself in order to get back to Wonderland, exactly as Charlotte has said. Multiple times. Although, as I'm reading through this, I kind of have to ask an important question. If belief in the real Wonderland is a thing that lets wonders come and go freely, why can't any of them go to the actual Wonderland? Oh, right, sorry. That's me using that pesky logic again. Can't have any of that. Besides, the story would have been over before it even began if that was the case. Ugh. She lands in the remains of an old castle made from ivory stone. She thinks about what the missing boy who'd returned had said. Real. She thinks that she understands what was meant now, that there isn't so much of a divide between the real Wonderland and the place where they have been, which the real treasure was the friends we made along the way, I guess. Anyway, the Jabberwocks that had been circling overhead now land, except that each and every one of them are noticeably different from each other. So different, I question why they're all classified as Jabberwocks at that point. And there I go with that pesky logic again. And Alice's main goal here is to believe in herself, which, sure, I guess. As she does this, the kids who had entered the final trail and were lost start to show up until there are now more children than Jabberwocks. Alice then starts to recite the poem, and as she does this, she thinks about all of the character growth that's happened to all of her friends, except that none of this character growth was ever actually shown to the readers, so not only is it a pointless time waster, but it's also stupid to boot. When they finish the poem, the other named characters show up. So now we're back to the point where the previous chapter left off. She announces that they've restored Wonderland to how it should be, but then is immediately disappointed that, shouting out a poem and making some monsters leave didn't actually do anything. The Jabberwocks had all left, but now 4 of them come back and start to circle for a while. They then perch around the 4 corners, which Alice acknowledges as symbolism for each of the 4 suites. They're also the symbols for each of the countries of the UK as well, which, gee, really original thinking there. One of the Jabberwocks is actually supposed to be Dina, and it's getting to the point where even the book itself acknowledges how weirdly out of place it is now that she's a Jabberwock. Dina then bombs the group and begins to attack. Alice thinks really hard about how unafraid she is in order to try to defeat Dina once and for all. But the problem is, this isn't Alice's personal Jabberwock to defeat. It's obviously Chess's. Chapter 36. Thanks to the shifting point of view, as well as a stroke of what has to be probably the top 10 worst cop-outs ever, we don't actually see Dina attacking Chess. No, instead what we see is Chess waking up after he'd taken a hit, and Kit had dragged him to safety. Also, instead of actually showing us the huge fight we're forced to endure as Chess looks out a window and watches it from afar. It was all leading to this moment. As Wonderland hangs in the balance, years of wreckage around us, Ace's belief remains the key. Dina plans to break her. To do that, she's going to kill us. Dina is going to kill me. I am once again begging the author to please explain to us why Dina couldn't have simply killed Alice and been done with it. Please tell us why. As Chess and Kit continue to watch the battle without ever once thinking that they should go help, Chess decides that now is a perfect time to offload all of his survivor's guilt, and Kit decides that now is a perfect time to offload all of the garbage that he's also been holding on to. We're literally through chapters from the end. Please get to the freaking point. Finally, somebody screams outside, and it seems to remind them that there's this battle going on only a few feet away. Chess realizes that the Jabberwock, led by Dina, are going to kill everybody unless they do something, so he tells Kit that it's time to give dear old Granny a taste of her own medicine. Chapter 37. Alice stands and looks around at the fighting going on around her. They're down to their last leg, and the only reason why I know that things are going to turn out okay is because never once has the author allowed literally a single bad thing to happen to any of the characters for more than a few pages. That feeling has multiplied now that we're in the final chapter. Alice eventually walks out into the middle of the battle, and again, the only reason why Dina doesn't outright kill her is simply because the author demands it. The fighting stops, and a song starts up around Alice. She feels like she can face anything, and then Dina immediately charbroiled her grandsons, because, of course, I only wish that the author had the courage to kill off her male lead at the 11th hour, but even I'm not that stupid to believe that. After that, the 4 remaining Jabberwocks turn into the quarterheads. Scarlet goes over to Alice and basically brags about how she's won. She then proceeds to explain that the onyx stones that the 4 of them have been wearing this entire time have been collecting data from their Wonder Visions, which they've been using to transform themselves into unbeatable Jabberwocks, ones that aren't destroyed by people overcoming their fears. Which again, that's the how, not the why. Scarlet continues to mock Alice and asks if she solved all of her mummy's riddles. Alice agrees that she has, but then refuses to explain anything to them, which kind of seems like a dumb point when Scarlet's literally finished explaining that she's already collected the data anyway, but whatever, make your half-hearted stand, Alice. Scarlet says that it doesn't matter if Wonderland rejects her as its queen because that's not the end goal. Dina explains that her goal is to destroy Wonderland, so now we have that, but still no reason why. Thank you so much for this. Alice looks around and realizes that while there's a destroyed chair where Chess and Kit had been, there aren't any charred remains. That gives her hope to continue on. She calmly explains to Dina that what Dina does or doesn't believe about Wonderland doesn't matter. It's people like Alice who are feeding energy into Wonderland that is more of a metaphysical plane of existence rather than someplace like normal London, that it only exists because of feedback from belief. Which, don't get me wrong, because I'm 100% down with that. But the problem is that if the only thing the actual Wonderland needed from the get-go was pure and utter belief in it, why wasn't it being powered with the belief of everybody else? Why is this resting solely on Alice's shoulders? None of this makes a lick of sense. Alice then begins to crow over her triumph. She randomly makes the destroyed castle whole once again, and this is apparently enough to destroy Scarlet. I have no idea what's going on. But then again, I'm not quite convinced that the author has any idea about what she's created either, so... Knave tells Alice that she's meant to be the next Queen of Wonderland. Alice naturally wants him to take over, but he says that he must take over the role of King of England in order to restore the rightful balance to the world, which I suppose is fair enough, but we hadn't spent the past 2 books dealing with normal politics and English government. I don't think that Knave is simply going to show up, demand the throne, and then Paramount will simply let him. Chess shows up, happy that they defeated the great evil, except they literally didn't do anything. I am so confused. Dina, Savine, and the Minister's Badge are all still alive and quickly leave without anybody bothering to stop them. If this wasn't the end of the series, I think that this was a setup for the next book. But who cares about them? Let's all hail Alice, Queen of Wonderland. Gah, this ending was so bad. I'm going to be angry if there's no explanation for what happened in the epilogue. Epilogue. 2 years later, Alice and Knave sit down to discuss opening up travel between their 2 kingdoms. I thought that it was tedious until I got to the next section, which was close to 2 pages of non-stop description about Blanche/Rebecca helping Alice to dress, and then her staring in a mirror. An entire paragraph is dedicated to her hair, and a second one to her eyes. This is literally the last bit of this book. Can we please not? Finally, around the 6th page, the narration remembers that it was supposed to be wrapping things up. We're told that Knave and Alice had been working hard to undo all of the damage that Cordelia did with her anti-Wonderland rhetoric and to help restore England to what it had once been. This is quickly thrown aside for one last reminder that Chess and Alice are supposed to be in love. She meets up with him on her way to some ball or another. At the party, Knave asks Chess how things are going in Chess's new role of Minister of Spades. Sierra mentioned of what happened to the previous guy, so excuse me when I say, ah! The narration also makes a last-ditch effort to try and pair Maddie off with Knave, even though I'm pretty certain that there had been an attempt to pair her off with Jack earlier. I don't think it matters much, nor do I care. Also, Jack is now the Minister of Cubs, if anybody gives a hoot. I know I don't. Alice runs down the list of some of the other named characters before landing on Raving Hatter. She'd offer him one of the quarterhead positions, but he said that he'd rather focus on a project that Charlotte wanted to implement, which is a Wonderlander school in the middle of normal London. Alice and Chess sit together and watch the party without participating. As the party begins to wind down, she turns to him and expresses all of these doubts she's been having. Being queen is obviously difficult, especially when you're left to pick up after Dina and the mess she made of things. Chess tells her that he's going to remain by her side no matter what. They then transport themselves back to Wonderland, and this series ends on that note. So, final thoughts time. I feel like this was kind of a horse the dead horse moment, but I feel like there was little that actually went on. Like, this book was over 300 pages, but this was part 2. But how can it be that nothing of actual value happened? What lessons did Alice learn from her mom's visions that we, the readers, didn't figure out as soon as she started trying to get into Wonderland? That if you believe in Wonderland, it'll exist. That's it. I struggled through the most asinine duology imaginable for a lesson that was told to us in the beginning of the first book before she even got into Wonderland. The rest of the story was unnecessary after that point, especially because literally nothing was actually resolved. Catherine, who fucking knows? Not the author, that's for sure. She was a cheap plot device to get Alice into position and not an actual character. Dina, she vanished into the void and apparently never bothered Alice nor Knave ever again. This was honestly the biggest letdown of all, since so much time was spent building Dina up to be the big bad villain, only for the author to randomly decide not to do anything. So in the end, Dina was nothing more than a cop-out of a plot device, also to get Alice into position. Except that at least Catherine's motives were explained. We never had that with Dina. Alice herself was barely a character. She was set dressing. She had no agency unless some outside force came and acted upon her. Even in the epilogue, where she's supposed to be the queen, she's still acting like a whiny brat who wants somebody else to do all of the actual work for her. I can't believe that I'm going to say something like this, but between the romance of Alice and Chess and the romance of Christian Grey and Anna Steele, I'd pick Christian and Anna. Anna and Christian might have been toxic as anything, but at least it felt like they were actually attracted to one another. I will defend this forever, but it still felt like the author decided that her story needed a love interest, so she shoehorned in Chess at the last second, and then never bothered to go back in and, actually give them chemistry. But I also don't know how to explain to people that you can have a compelling romance in the background of a story with main themes of a fantasy action thriller. It was also like the author herself had little knowledge of a single thing that she was writing. Half of the time I swear that the Wonderland gene was supposed to be a metaphor for autism, but I'm not quite sure that the author ever actually reached that point on her own. This is also really frustrating aside for me, but I swear that at some point the author watched my videos on her first book or somebody else's not so glowing review, so she decided to, make the second book be way more British. Like, she used a lot of British slang in terms like electric torch instead of flashlight. But my main problem is that I don't care if Alice used a zippity floop to read after dark. The words used in passing weren't the problem with the first book. My problem with the book was mainly that the author was writing with such authority about things that were laughably wrong, such as why the Queen of England woke up one day and decided to untether Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. She also seemed to be painfully clinging to the idea that painting the roses red was the literal painting of white roses, pretty much throughout the entire second book, so I don't know what I was expecting. All of that being said, how would I fix this? First off, before I got started reading the Wonderland Trials, I thought that it would be more along the lines of Hunger Games meets Alice in Wonderland, and I really wish that it had been what we've been given instead. This was supposed to be a dystopia, but I never once got the sense from the start of the first book. Like, things are kind of bland, I suppose, but that's kind of the UK in general. They think that vinegar is an acceptable condiment, for crying out loud. The book tried to tell us stuff like, oh, having fun is illegal, and then never bothered to explore that. I think that that's such an interesting concept and would have enjoyed seeing more of that. Also, way more of actual oppression before reaching Wonderland, because the only thing that I got from Alice was her being an ungrateful brat. She wasn't oppressed, she was a whiny teenager who didn't want to do what her auntie/sister told her to do. Wah. I would have also made the card rankings make actual sense. They kept being brought up, but why? What purpose did any of it serve? Maybe if there were powers that came with it, or privileges, you could outrank somebody at the task for the day and move up, and get dinner that night or whatever. Remember, I'm thinking of the Hunger Games here. And obviously, actually building up a villain who has an actual reason for doing what she's doing, and then seeing her destroyed in the end. Why is this so hard? So yeah, this series had a lot of potential, and I really hate that word because it could have been good, but it simply wasn't. It felt to me that the author had one published book under her belt, so she was given some freedom, but then she was given too much and ruined everything. Will I ever read Sara Ella's mermaid book? Probably, at some point, eventually. But for now, what's next for YouTube? I will be tackling Icebreaker by Hannah Mills. Yes, the book that TikTok was going crazy about for the longest time. I'm finally getting around to reading it. Thanks for listening to my Book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book snarks, always free and updated every morning. Newly added to Patreon is to become a member without paying. You'll get access to the same thing as Tumblr, but on Patreon. Supporters can have access to so many more book snarks starting at $1 a month. Also new is a 1-week free Patreon trial, so be sure to check that out. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just $10 per chapter. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of spicy short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash tales on my stories, so if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!